you know what? I'm just here for the women's basketball. Caitlin Clark has been flirting with a triple-double, which would have been the first rookie in WNBA history to get one. Over the last week or so, I knew she was right there on the precipice. I knew she was on the precipice. And then she gets it. She makes history over the weekend. She gets a triple dub, and her team beats the New York Liberty. And ever the humble star that Caitlin Clark is, she tried to defer and defer and defer when they talked about it at the press conference until Aaliyah Boston stepped in.
Caitlin, you're the first Fever player to ever get a triple-double in franchise history. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
How much does that big of a win add on to that accomplishment?
Honestly, like I'm just happy we won. Like I've said, like I take a lot of pride in being able to do a lot of different things for this team. Like I want to be able to, I think we're really good when I can get the ball off the glass and just go in transition and find my teammates and set them up. But like obviously 13 assists, like that means my teammates made 13 shots off my passes. So that goes to them. But I mean, I don't know.
She's so humble, isn't she?
Well, I don't know what to
Well,
say.
let me tell
Like
ya.
I mean, it's great.
That's
I don't know.
Pretty cool, Caitlin. Great job, sister.
So we aired this highlight, right? I did the highlight on SportsCenter, and I heard the sound, and I didn't know if there was a touch of shade in that. To be honest with you,
You thought there was shade.
I thought it was like a tongue in cheek. Oh, she's so humble. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Well,
Listen, I'm not trying to make any aspersions here, any assumptions, but it didn't feel genuine to me, Elle.
I don't think so. Knowing Aaliyah Boston,
Okay.
she's a pretty genuine person.
Okay.
I think, it's seemingly as the Fever have become more of a team, and we're seeing that they're getting, more wins than ever. This was a team that started out 2-9, and look at them. They're a postseason team right now, as of now.
They're
So we'll
literally
see
a
what happens
7
after
seed
the
in the
break.
WNBA.
Yeah, they're a 7 seed right now. So they're playing really well. I've noticed that there's a little bit of some, it feels like some inside jokes that are happening between the Fever
That's a good
at the
point.
right? Like they're doing a thing where there's a lot of that where like Caitlin will try to say something about her teammates or defer to her teammates, and they'll be like, "Nah, make it about Caitlin." I think there's a little bit of an inside joke thing that's happening there, because Caitlin tends to not talk about her own achievements or accomplishments and is being incredibly deferential. And I do think sometimes your teammates are like, "Do the victory lap, bruh." Like,
Yeah.
this isn't a little thing. No one's ever had a triple-double as a rookie in W history. So, like, do your victory lap, Caitlin. Please stop. I know you're trying to be – and, like, there was a little bit of that with, like, Matt Ryan, where his teammates, when I would cover the Falcons, would be like, he'd throw 6 touchdowns, and then he'd be like, "Oh, I just it was all the offensive line." And they're like,
Yeah.
like, we get it. You're humble, but like, you don't have many of these opportunities or these kinds of games. And so just like do your victory lap and keep it pushing. So I think it was much more about that. But what I loved was the pettiness, because I love petty. And we have such a great time when it comes to sports, like the delineation between the pettiness that was talked about around the W earlier in the season surrounding Caitlin Clark and the pettiness that we're now seeing, which is like fun, competitive petty. And that petty was on full display when Sabrina Ionescu was asked post-game about the Fever beating the number 1 team as it stands right now in the league, in the New York Liberty. And this is what she said.
What was behind you all maybe not playing Liberty basketball this afternoon, and why you couldn't earn this win?
No, we play Liberty basketball, but understanding like this is their Super Bowl game. I mean, we've beaten them 3 times this year already. We knew they were going to come into this game really hungry, and it's tough to beat a team 4 times. Like it's just tough in our league, especially with how every team has just grown, and especially this young team. You've been able to just see how much they've grown just throughout the first half of the season. So, I don't think it was necessarily us not playing our style of basketball. It was just understanding that we had to come in with a sense of urgency, knowing it's not going to be as easy as it was in the first couple games that we were able to go up against them, because they've just grown.
Yikes.
She called it their Super Bowl.
All right, timeout.
So petty.
That's a flagrant, and that is an unearned petty, because the Liberty haven't won anything.
I know, exactly. I know, but still, it's, listen, all of us can relate, right? Like we
Uh-huh.
have this ongoing thing with my co-host on the 6 p.m. Sports Center, Kevin Nagandi, between the Braves and the Phillies. And for the
That's
last
true.
couple of years, we win the World Series a few years ago. I was insufferable because that's who I am. I've told you numerous times, if you don't know me by now, I am a gracious loser. I am not a gracious winner. I'm going to gloat and talk because when else do you get to do it, right? You don't
That's
get to do it when
correct.
you're losing. And so I was insufferable. And so for the last 2 years, as the Phillies have put the Braves out of the postseason 2 years in a row now, despite the Braves having the best record in baseball last year, the best hitting team maybe of all time, they fall to the Phillies for a second straight year. And now we have this like ongoing thing, except for that I've laid out, bruh, the Braves aren't good this year. They lost Ronald Acuna. They lost Spencer Strider. They can't field a team. They can't hit the ball. They're not great. And that's okay. That is okay because we won a World Series 3 years ago. Like, I'm still okay. I'm good. I don't need to win one every year, Boston. But he just keeps coming at me. And so my reply back to him is whenever he talks about the Phillies being better than the Braves in the division, I'm like, hang the banner, Kevin. Ooh,
Hey,
you ended the Braves season 2 years in a row. Did you
that's
get a
true.
ring for it? Did you get a ring? Because when we go to the postseason and make a run, we finish the job. We win the World Series. You don't do that. And so I I hear Sabrina. I hear her whenever someone's like, "What does this mean? You lost to the Fever. What does this mean?" She's like, "This doesn't mean to us. We didn't need to win this game. They needed to win this game." And I love
That
it.
cuts to the core of Nagandi too, because Philly, man, they're up there. They are among the most insufferable. So it's interesting to get that glimpse behind the dynamic because Philly is one of those cities and sports markets where you don't talk. It's only titles. It's only title talk.
It's supposed to be, but it's been a
It's
long
not
time.
Indianapolis, hoisting the, we made the divisional round
Participant.
banner. It ain't the Lakers hoisting the in-season tournament champions banner, which by the way, listen, I think the Fever can make some serious noise. They're 9-13, they're the 7th seed, and they are clicking and they are young. And in the same vein that the Liberty think that this was their Super Bowl, I think the Fever understand anytime, anywhere, any place they go, they're getting everybody's best shot. It's the other team's Super Bowl when they play them, in my estimation, with 17, 18,000 people in these road arenas that they have to go into. I think it's actually completely inverted in that regard.
Really?
Yes, definitely. 100%. People are having to relocate games on the road.
I don't You're right. There is definitely a road advantage. I think ultimately, not to sound like a broken record, ultimately, it always comes down to defense when it comes to teams that can really compete and contend. Do I think they can be a playoff team? Absolutely. But when you talk about teams that can really like contend, I do think veteran leadership is
Yeah.
important in those situations. And also now the Olympic break's really going to help Caitlin because usually I've talked to Chinea Ogwumike about this, and she was also a number one overall pick
Mhm.
and was in a Final Four and then started playing in the W a month later. And she's like, man, halfway through the season, you are so gassed. Like you're
Yeah.
just gassed. You've been playing basketball for like 8 months. Like you
She's been
are
playing
so over it.
Caitlin Clark's been playing basketball nonstop since November.
Right, like
That's
nonstop. And so
crazy.
so I do think the Olympic break is going to help them in that way, but defense
Uh-huh.
is also a really integral part of a team that can actually make some noise, and the Fever just don't have it defensively. But I would say that whereas a team like the Chicago Sky, who at one point were sort of also a middling team, I think Andrea Carter called them mid teams. They're just both mid. The Fever have started to round out and are making a little bit of noise. They're beating teams now. They went the whole year without beating a team over 500, and
Mhm.
then they beat the Mercury, which was the first team, and then they beat the Liberty, which is the top team in the league. So they're really starting to round into form, as opposed to like a Chicago Sky team who is still not. They're still a peripheral playoff team, but they do have a star and a great storyline there in Angel Reese, who extends her double streak to 12. And she's coming for Candace Parker type records. And now all of a sudden, a rookie of the year race that looked like a foregone conclusion that was going to go Caitlin Clark's way. And I think it still will, but it's tightening. It's like the odds are
Mhm.
tightening. It's getting much more interesting because you've got these two players who are playing incredibly well, making history their rookie year. I would say, and this is purely off of asking a lot of questions, working in this space, knowing what I know about basketball, and again, asking more questions, I would still maybe slightly give the edge to Caitlin putting everything else aside, like not just because of the name and the sellouts and like what she's doing for viewership, just the basketball part, right? Because most W players would tell you it is harder for a guard to translate right away in the W than it is a post player, right? And so post players tend to have success a little bit quicker. And so just because she was already up against that aspect of it, I would still probably give that nod to Caitlin Clark for Rookie of the Year. But I think it's going to be a great race, and what Angel is able to do for a Chicago team that again is just trying to sort of fight for playoff positioning, but to keep them in these games and to keep them in the storylines. Like, it's going to be great.
Yeah, minus 700, I think, as of the time of this recording. Caitlin Clark for Rookie of the Year. This was a Fever team 2 years ago. They won 2 games.
Yeah.
Last in the standings. They were last in the standings last year. I think they won 4 games. Now they're at 9, and they're a playoff team. She leads in points, assists, and efficiency. I don't think it should be as close as maybe people think it is going to be. And we still have half of season to play. But yeah, Caitlin Clark, I think, is, if you just look at the numbers, it's right there. Boom.